テレ東BIZ。
Yes.
Hey. Hello.
Hello, nice to meet you, sir. I'm Wataru from TV Tokyo.
Thank you.
He's the cameraman.
Thank you, my friend.
Yeah.
You want me to sit where? There?
Yes, please, sir.
Foreign minister participates in NATO as a partner. What role did he play as a partner country?
No, we are very pleased that for the first time ever, the foreign ministers of Japan, of South Korea, Australia, and New Zealand took part in a meeting of foreign ministers in NATO. And in a way, it's a reflection of the relevance that Japan has in world affairs. It's a very big country, it's a huge economy, and it's a country that also knows Russia and China very well. And this is what your minister brought to us, a sense of the world, a sense that democracies should come together because the war that Russia started in Ukraine is not only about Europe. The way in which this war would end, the way in which we'll support Ukraine in its fight for fighting invasion, will be relevant for other players in other places of the world. So this is why we appreciate the participation of the Japanese foreign minister. We also look forward that at the NATO summit in Madrid in June to have the leaders, and we're also waiting for the Prime Minister of Japan to be with us in Madrid. It's immensely important, both in the knowledge and sophistication that Japan brings to all of us, also bringing the Indo-Pacific realities closer to our attention, but also in itself Japan is a very relevant country, and we appreciate the support, including in the sanctions imposed against Russia, in the support for Ukraine, and also we have decided today to work even closer with Japan and the other countries in the Asia-Pacific to do more on cyber, to do more on new technologies, and Japan is a leading technological power, to do more about countering hybrid and disinformation campaigns, to do more for the freedom of navigation, which is important also for your part of the world. So again, Japan is a very close partner of ours and look forward to building upon that partnership.
One more question about Japan, sorry. So, Japanese Minister Hayashi expressed concern that China has not condemned this Russian invasion and Russian behavior. So, what's your view about this opinion?
This is a defining moment also for China. It's not only about Russia. It's not only about NATO. It's not only about European Union or G7 for that matter, where Japan also plays a leading role. It's also a moment of truth for China, because China for decades has presented herself as the champion of sovereignty, of freedom of decision of nations, against changes of borders by war. And all of a sudden, we see China supporting President Putin and Russia. So that's a sort of a significant shift in Chinese policy. We believe that China should reconsider the support for the war that Putin has started in Ukraine, because the way in which this war would end and the consequences of this war will be global. And if China wants to have a constructive competition with us, that's perfectly fine. We can compete, but also cooperate. But the way in which China will position now will determine the reputation of China in the world and what kind of old order we live in. Do we want a world with rules, a world with predictability, a world with competition between nations, which is something which will continue also with China, can be done in a predictable way with rules, or we want the law of the jungle international affairs. And this is a major test for China. It is a test for Russia. The second question for China is, do they want to be associated with a pariah? Putin today is a pariah internationally. His family is basically barred from visiting any free nation in the world. His leadership is basically under sanctions. Russia will become much more weak because of this war that they started against Ukraine. So that's a major decision for China to make. What kind of country would they want to be? What kind of world system they would like to contribute to? And what kind of camp do they want to be in the world? With the countries that defend sovereignty and the freedom of nations, or the countries that start war against their neighbors? We hope that China will choose to be part of a world system that is predictable, where competition can coexist with cooperation.
Ukraine Foreign Minister Kuleba told us, told the media, that what they want are three items: weapons, weapons, weapons. Yeah, so this is his simple message for NATO. So how will you answer this request?
Ukraine has the right to defend herself. This is in the UN Charter, the right to self-defense of nations when they're attacked by an enemy. So NATO is doing exactly that. We are helping a nation to defend itself. So this is why the second stage of the war that Russia started in Ukraine, after 6 weeks, is moving to another stage, a different stage, an inflection point in this war. And this is why, for a different type of war, because what will happen in the next few days or weeks will be a different kind of war than the ones we have seen for the first 6 weeks. Will be different. Will be more conventional, or will be larger territory, will be confrontation between more traditional armies. This is why President Zelensky, Foreign Minister Kuleba are asking from us support, military support, but also financial and humanitarian, but military support that is fit for the new stage of the war. And this is why I think he's right in asking more, but also different kind of equipments to be able to fight the same heroic fight that they fought for the first 6 weeks. Of course, it's up to each ally. NATO is not deciding on behalf of all 30 allies. Each ally individually, US, Canada, UK, Germany, France, whoever, Poland or Romania, they will decide what kind of support they can give. But Mr. Kuleba was very clear and very convincing that they need support for fighting the war in the new stage of the war. And this is something I believe allies will be responsive to the requests.
Someone was criticizing the German principle not to provide their arms to the computing area. So they changed last month. How do you see it?
We believe that this atrocious war by Putin in Ukraine was a wake-up call for many allies in Europe. Germany is the biggest country in the European Union and also the biggest ally in Europe of NATO. So the way in which Germany changed decade-long policy, that was of more restraint, more pacifistic if you want, even with legislation prohibiting to export weapons to areas of conflict. This has changed basically in a matter of days. Why? Because the war that Putin has waged against Ukraine, they were lying to the Germans, saying that they will not invade. They've been basically creating such emotion in the German public opinion, in the Japanese public opinion, the atrocities that we have seen. So I think we should applaud the fact that Germany, after long decades of a specific attitude when it comes to security and army and defense, they are living to the importance of the moment. We salute the change in German policy, and we know that this will continue.
Okay. So the next question about your country, so Romania. You were the first executive of the NATO from the former Eastern Bloc country. For the former Eastern Bloc country, how important is NATO presence?
Listen, there is a simple truth, that there is no prosperity without security. So NATO offers security, which is the foundation of everything else. The moment you have security guaranteed by a strong alliance like NATO, everything else, economy, trade, culture, civic activities, or anything else can flourish. My country, Romania, I was foreign minister when my country joined NATO 18 years ago. the GDP of Romania quadrupled, 4 times larger than before. After we joined the European Union, we joined NATO, we joined the European Union. So for all of our countries, being part of NATO and European Union is security and prosperity. And this is why we are so happy to be in NATO and also feeling so secure being in NATO, especially seeing the tragedy in Ukraine. The war against Georgia a few years ago, the wars in Transnistria some decades ago, the war in Nagorno-Karabakh, not far away from the Black Sea. So being in NATO is security, which means prosperity, which means everything else. Unfortunately, Russia, and especially President Putin, they developed a sort of a false narrative. Because the situation domestically, internally in Russia is bad, they need to invent an enemy outside. That's standard politics, especially for autocrats like Putin, that stay for long in power. Because Russia today is a country that has a small economy, according to the size of the country. Now with the contraction of the economy, and because of the sanctions, which will be 10 to 15% contraction, I think they have the economy of Spain, a huge country having the economy of a medium-sized economic player in Europe. So in a way, Putin and the ideologues in the Kremlin, they needed basically a foreign enemy in order to have a motivation for the fact that Russia is doing very badly economically and socially. So they invented this idea that the West is bad, that NATO is bad, that America is bad, and we have something against them. This is not true. But just because to cover the weaknesses of the domestic situation in Russia, that's why they also try to pump up nationalism. That's why they're having this rhetoric. But in the end, that's only lies. It's only lies. Unfortunately, for some people in Russia, these lies have some traction. And it is our common obligation to start communicating as much as we can because of the censorship on free media and information in Russia, that in fact this war is not only a war against Ukraine. This is also a war against the young population of Russia itself. Not only the soldiers dying without knowing why and not knowing where because of this crazy war, but in fact the isolation of Russia because of the war is also making the young Russians not have a future. This is bad. So this war is not only against Ukraine that Putin started, it's a war against his own people in the end. And we hope only that the Russian people will discover that they are living in a lie, and we hope that this will change sooner rather than later.
The Secretary General of NATO and so some experts pointed out that this war might long for over a year or a couple of years. Yeah, what's your opinion about that?
Of course, what Secretary General Stoltenberg says is based on our analysis. He actually said that this war could take weeks, months, or even years. So this is a relatively long time span. It depends very much on the situation on the ground. It depends very much on how the balance of power between the Russian military regrouped and Ukrainian military would look like. So it could happen fast, it could take longer, or take even years. That's what Secretary General Stoltenberg basically said, that we should be prepared for any option in terms of the duration of the war. Of course, we'll hope to see a political solution sooner. We are supporting Ukraine because the stronger the Ukrainian army is, the faster a political solution would be, because Russia will be weakened and defeated eventually. So this will make them try diplomacy and not war. So we are prepared for any scenario, short, medium, or even longer scenario. We'll continue to support Ukraine.